Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Corey Pierce, and I'm the Marketing Director at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Rethinking Customer Onboarding to Accelerate Success. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session. A link to the recording will be available 24 hours after the webinar. Throughout the presentation, you are welcome to submit your questions via the question and answer box, and our staff will try and answer them as we go. We will also address as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of this webinar. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you today to our presenter, Jason Whitehead. Jason is the CEO of Tritanus, which is a customer success and software adoption consulting firm. He is also co-founder of Customer Success Mastermind, which is an ongoing professional growth subscription program for CS professionals. Jason works to bridge the gap between buyers and sellers of SaaS software to help accelerate user adoption and value creation so both organizations are successful. He is also a frequent blogger and co-host of the popular customer success podcast series, The Jason's Take On, that advocates for taking bold action to drive customer success. I definitely recommend checking it out. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Great. Hi, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Just give you a little bit of background on my career and my perspective that I'm bringing to you, and really then focus in on the subject we're going to cover today, which is rethinking customer onboarding to accelerate success. I've been working in the user adoption and customer success space for over 20 years now, and I've spent a lot of that time working with buyers of software to really help them hands-on deploy enterprise systems and then make sure people are using them year after year so they get value. And really what I've learned is that a lot of what most people bring to IT projects and IT initiatives is really focused on the technology, but doesn't really do enough to really help accelerate adoption and to get that success that people want. And I wanted to share with you guys some of my passion for this, as well as some of my experiences that I've learned that hopefully you guys will be able to go and apply in your own worlds and with your customers. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. So let's jump through here. And obviously just a little bit about Tritanus. As Corey said, we do work helping buyers and sellers of software really come together and make sure both are successful. And we work probably 50% with each group. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is that there's still quite a few differences in perspective and approach about what it takes to achieve success from software if you're working with a software supplier versus a software buyer. So really hoping to bridge some of that gap here today. So let's talk about, we're going to cover three main areas today, and I think you'll find these quite fun. One of the first ones that we're going to cover right up front is sort of the big picture is why do most onboarding programs, why are they ineffective, and why do they not set your customers up for success? And what does that look like? And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can help your customers drive their own internal success and how you can actually build their capacity and your own capacity to really help grow and scale success for everyone. And then as we get towards the end, the third section, we'll really look at specific tactics for how we can put this into action fast with your low, medium, and high touch customers. After that, I have a quick special offer for you guys, so please stick around for that. And then we'll have Q&A right after that. So really excited about this. We've got a lot to go over, so I'll probably go quite quickly through this, but you can always catch the replay as well. So let's jump in right up front here. We'll talk about many customer success teams talk about focus on business outcomes, and yet so many are still really focused on just their own product. And most of their onboarding efforts are, let me get you onto our product fast. Let me teach you how to use our product fast. Let me get you really focused on how you're going to get our product up and running in your group. And they seem to lose sight of the specifics of what happens after that's out the door and where does that really generate business outcomes. And when you talk with your customers, we actually find that the challenge is not that your customers don't get value from your product, it's that they can't get value from any product. And what that really typically means is that a lot of traditional approaches to onboarding and driving adoption and value creation, they really don't work, and it's time to do something new. Let me give you, one of the things that I found very helpful, and this might sort of set the stage for you, is when you go into a new customer's organization, ask them, right, don't assume they know how to drive adoption, how to get value with your software or any software. And two of the easiest questions you can ask them right up front is, tell me about your current product stack in your organization. Ask them, how many of your current applications have 100% adoption and are delivering full and effective value to you? And when you ask that question, you'll probably get a big fat 0. Or there may be 1 or 2, but even that's unlikely. And then the next question then is ask these customers, well, what is your typical adoption rate? And what is the amount of value that you think you're getting from your software investments relative to the potential value? And I typically hear things, people say, we're maybe using 10% of the application or 15% of the application, or, we're probably getting about 20% of what we actually thought we would get, or we know that's possible. We're just not getting it there. So if you ask your customers those 2 questions right up front, and you start to hear some results that this is common across their entire product stack, and it doesn't matter if it's a SaaS product or an on-premise or even a homegrown, in-house developed product, that should tell you that the challenge your customers face is that they lack the ability to really drive effective use of technology and get people in their organization to embrace technology in a way that really creates the value. And so if you realize that's their root issue, it really opens up your thinking a little bit more to say, how do I move past my product to help solve this really bigger underlying root cause issue for my customers so that they will get the value they need from my product. And if they happen to get value for their other products because of that, they're going to thank me even more. So that's a win as well. So let's jump in real quick and do just a quick poll. Would love to hear from you guys. Tell me what you find in your organizations. Are my customers, are they effective at driving user adoption of software on their own? And do not need any help in this area? So please just go ahead and let me know what you think. Do you strongly disagree, meaning your customers really are not good at it? Do you disagree? Neutral, agree, meaning some of your customers are pretty good at driving adoption, or strongly agree that, yep, most of my customers are really good at this. And we're starting to get some results come in, and as I would expect, and we'll share the results in just a couple minutes when the poll closes, a couple seconds actually. Early indications look like most customers are struggling with this quite a bit. So we'll see the results in just a second here. Give you a quick minute to go and complete the poll. Okay, almost there. Time for just a couple more people if you want to go ahead and answer. All right, the results are coming in. So let's take a look at what the final results were. People, 15% strongly disagreed and 53% disagreed. So it's about 68% really they're having trouble driving adoption and customers don't know how to do that. And when you put in the neutral, we're at 88% and only 11% agree that their customers are good at it. And no one said that strongly agree. So clearly this is a big problem, and it's common across all kinds of software companies and software buyers. And this is really a big thing. And this tells me that a lot more work needs to be done in this area to really get the results going that we need and to really get customers to get the level of success that they want. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close that poll, and then we will move on. So let's talk about, with this as a backdrop, we've acknowledged that software adoption is a big challenge, and what people have been doing for years and years has been working. I argue that now is the time that we need to start to focus on this problem, and really this is the time for us to say we need to solve this problem, and this is the problem that needs to be solved, and acknowledge that many of us don't know how to solve it. It's new to most people, and it requires some new skill sets. And I want to walk you through now just a really quick diagram that I've used with customers for over 15 years now, and every time I do this with an executive who's buying software, or even with a software executive, I immediately get the head nods, and they start saying, yes, this is the problem that we face, and we need to address this. So let's talk about what, before we get to that, apologies, jumped ahead of myself here. Let's think about, when do your customer projects fail? And some get a new project and everyone's just, what is success? It's on time and on budget delivery. And many IT folks will say that, many software vendors will say that. Maybe not. Is it when the system doesn't work? Well, you're not going to go live with a system that doesn't work. And I would argue that if you find during testing or proofs of concept or other things that this is not the right system, you haven't failed because you prevented a bigger investment and a bigger disruption to your organization. For after go live, I would argue that if it doesn't work, it's not before go live, it's only after go live. But here what I think it really comes down to is you can have the system that meets all functional specs and all requirements, and I've seen this so many times, and yet users and management and the customer will all say, hey, we're not using it, it's not getting value, we don't need it, let's get it out of here, let's stop wasting our time and money. So I would argue that your IT customer, or your projects fail when your customers are not getting value from their investments, and that's really the case. So that means that's the problem we need to solve. So let's take a look at this timeline now. And if you look on the left side of this chart, you can see over here that at the beginning of an IT investment, everyone's very excited. They found there is a business problem that we need to solve. And we think that by implementing this software, we can improve our business. And maybe that's we'll do things faster or cheaper, or we'll improve quality, or we'll streamline processes, or we'll collaborate better, or we'll have less headcount, or whatever it may be. There's some business outcome that they're going to want. And by investing in this software, that's our ROI. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be financial. And in a perfect world, you know what, we'll just implement some software, we'll go right there, and in a couple of weeks or months or a year, we will achieve our goal. But it's not a perfect world. And what happens on most projects that we see is that people spend a lot of time and effort getting requirements and designing systems and building systems and testing and going through sprints or doing what they need to do and training users and doing communications and all the great stuff. And then they eventually go live. And typically what happens is at the point of go live, all you've really done is maximize your sunk cost to date. You haven't added 1 ounce of value. You haven't delivered one improvement to the organization, typically, all the way through. And instead, this is where they go. And most IT projects stop here shortly thereafter. Oh, we've got it live. You know, this is success on time and on budget. And when you look at this and you see the big gap between what's been delivered and the benefits that we're hoping to achieve out in the future, there is a huge gap there that needs to be addressed. And if you stop there, you've got some real problems. So one of the things that you often will find then is suddenly now we've got all this effort to recover our costs. Maybe we'll get a few people to use it and we'll get a little value. Maybe we'll get a small group to use it and we slowly come up here. And eventually we might break even. And on many IT projects, this doesn't even happen. They may continue to lose value for so long that they pull the project. And I've seen that time and time again. So you've got to find a way to how do we mitigate this risk of what happens after go live and to fill this value gap. And then eventually, we don't want to just break even. We want to achieve the outcomes that we wanted. We want to achieve this business impact, this business results, and really get the time and value, or the value for all this time and effort we've put in here. And most organizations, they say, oh, we want to. Our business case says that in 3 years we'll have these great perks. Well, that's great. But what happens in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? You've got to find a way to keep that success going year after year in really complex and dynamic environments. And if you just stop your project right here at the go live and the sunk cost of your customers stop there, which is probably the bigger issue, you're really not going to get those results that you want. And as a software vendor, you're not going to get the renewals that you want. So this really brings up the question, why do people spend so much time and effort focusing here on what happens during the technical implementation and the go live, and not on this back end where all the value is created? Why are they not looking at the adoption? Why are they not looking at how the organization is embracing technology? And I would argue that this is the area where you need to make sure you guys are focusing, that you're focusing your clients. And to do that effectively, that all needs to start during the customer onboarding process. So let's just sort of clear this up a little bit. What's the typical strategy that we've seen time and time again? And I'd love to hear if this happens with you guys. So feel free to share your comments or put something in the chat if you think this is what typically is done. Is really we focus on getting live, and we'll spend a little bit of time here, sort of the go live and go home approach. We've got it out the door, we're done. And this change management effort is really, we train people on the system and then we sort of forget about them, we move on. They've been trained, they should know how to use the system. And then we'll do a little communications to sort of sell staff on the latest and greatest, but we haven't really delivered any value. And this is where we stop. And the typical results, data's not always accurate. People leave things out. People put in little bits of it. It's kind of a mess. We blame the end users. Oh, well, the system met spec. So, if the application's been delivered and they've been trained, it's the user's fault. So let's blame the users. And then obviously we have low use and low adoption and low value. So this is the typical approach that we often see. So the question then becomes, how do you get your customers to use an effective internal success process, an internal adoption process that's going to get them all the way through this recovery cost and up here to the clear benefits they want and keep them there year over year? So that's really what we're talking about here, and trying to create a little context. So as we go through a little bit more, some things to keep in back of your mind. Customers make their initial buying decision based on hope, but they renew based on their experience with your product. And if your customers aren't getting any value, you're not getting any renewals. So you really need to help focus them on that process. And when we look a little bit more in here, it's sort of lack of adoption is really the core issue for most software buyers. They're not getting people to use it effectively. They're not getting different groups of people in different departments to collaborate effectively using the tool. And I see that all the time with major enterprise systems like ERPs and CRMs, where there's a lot of interdependence amongst users in here. So if you're not getting the adoption and effective adoption, you're not getting the value, you're not getting the renewals all the way through. So this tells me that what you really need to go through and do is help your customers figure out how they're going to solve their adoption problems. And the solution here is that you need to get your customers to drive adoption value of your software in their organization. And you need to educate the customer and your team as well too, that only the customer can do this and can achieve success in their organization. They're the only one who can assign resources to this, can put the skills in place, can adjust their policies and processes to drive the user adoption that they need to do. As an external party, you can't do this. But for this to happen, you need to change how you onboard customers and how you engage with them from the very start. So you've got to get your customers to do the work to make it happen. So how do you do that? I think one of the first things that you need to do is get your onboarding programs to achieve business results and help your customers do what they've not been able to do on their own. And that is obviously lead and accelerate high impact change and adoption programs so they get the value from your solution. So that's sort of a big shift for a lot of organizations, especially for ones that say, hey, we're going to teach you how to use our product. We're going to get our product up and live. We're going to show you all the bells and whistles. We're going to train you on how to navigate the application. We're going to do in-app messaging. We'll do this kind of stuff. Instead, say, let's go through and see what our customers can do to drive adoption. And if they're challenging here, let's help them do that. So we'll do another quick poll right here. I know some people do include a little information and resources around adoption, but let's go through and just tell me, for quick poll number 2, our customers onboarding includes providing tools, resources, training to help customers build their capacity to drive adoption of our software in their organization. So do you guys currently do this? Strongly disagree, we don't do any of that. Neutral, we do a little bit of that. Agree and strongly agree. Obviously, we do quite a bit more of that. So go ahead and please share your thoughts of what this looks like, if you're doing that at all or not. Okay, getting some good results coming in. I think this is going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to sharing the results around this because I think you guys are going to really like what you see. It's quite interesting. Just a few more people, if you go ahead and share your opinion, please. Cool. All right, got a couple more coming in, I see. I think we're pretty good there. All right, so let's go ahead and close out the poll. So this is really interesting to me. So in the first poll, everyone said our customers really struggle with adoption and they're not doing it, they're not getting it, everything else. And here we're saying, hey, we include a lot of this. We've got 46% say we agree and another 17 say we strongly agree. We do a lot of this. That's over 63% right there, 63% right there. So yeah, we're doing this. 22%, a little bit more. So if you look at that together, it's 85%. So really, people are saying the majority of the effort is we're doing this, and yet we're saying our customers are not getting value. That tells me maybe we're not doing it as much as we think we are, or maybe what we're doing isn't effective. We need to take a look at it and see what we need to change because clearly our customers are still struggling here. So really interesting stuff there. And obviously, there's some groups there that are not doing it or not doing it at all. And that's probably a great opportunity for you guys is to say, we need to start doing this, but let's learn from everyone else and make sure we're doing the right stuff at the right time. Really good stuff. Okay, let's move on from there. Thank you for sharing, guys. So let's talk about this. How can you help your customers drive their own internal success? What does that actually look like? One of the things that we often see is when you think about your customers, they will rarely know how to get your product up and running, and you probably help with that quite a bit already, but really they probably don't know how to drive adoption to achieve the results that they want, and they really probably don't have the time or interest or capacity to figure it out for themselves. When we work with buyers of software, and we also work with customer success teams, one of the things we consistently hear is the buyers just say, just tell me what I need to do. I've got so much else on my plate. I don't have time to think about it. If you tell me what I need to do and you're very explicit that I can go and run with it, I'm happy to do it because I want to achieve success too, but you need to hold my hand from this. And I think Another point that's really interesting that this sort of goes against a lot of intuitive thinking is many times software today, and this probably applies to you, it can go live faster than your customers can adapt to it and adopt it. So we've seen, software that can go live immediately or in a week or 2 weeks, or, even some major things go live in less than a year. And yet oftentimes this is faster than the organization can move to. And if you get the software out faster and there's more complexity, there's more change in the organization, you need to have some way to make sure that people are adopting on the back end. And this sort of shifts around your traditional approach where, oh, we had a quick little training, quick little communication, and we're done. No, that's not the case now. You've got to think beyond this. So what this really means then is your customers, organizations, and this is the buyers I'm talking about here, they need an infrastructure internally to manage an ongoing adoption program. And they need to have different staff and skill requirements to make sure this happens, to make sure everyone across their organization is adopting the software. And they need to take some different approaches, and there'll be some different roles and responsibilities here. Now, this is particularly true if you have very complex systems or a large number of users or a geographically dispersed workforce. If you have a smaller application used just by a handful of people in one location, your needs are a little less complex, but you still have to do a lot of the activities around this. So one of the things I would suggest here is say, you actually need to have your customers from the very start, they need to set their own internal success team. And you have a team to make your customers successful. Many times they have like a person who is focused on getting it live that may be your point of contact, but they don't have a team to drive their ongoing success, and they really need one. And that really, people may say, hey, no, that's not really what we want to do. I actually had one customer that brought us in 6 months before they went live with the system to say, we need an adoption program because we've done this time and time again where we'll invest millions in systems, but no one gets it, no one uses it, and then we've wasted time and effort. Let's help us build the program first so that our users and our internal staff are ready the day we go live. So if we take this idea that customers need to have their own internal adoption or their internal success team, and they've never done this before, or they don't really do it well, what is it that we need to get them to do? How do we actually help our customers drive success and set their own internal teams? So one of the things I would say is there's a bunch of effort all the way across this timeline. Right up front, they have to plan for an adoption program and build this program, build the team around it. They need to know what are the activities we actually need to do and who should do those and when. What are the barriers to adoption we need to identify and remove? What are the things that we can use to accelerate adoption and success? What does that need to look like? And then as you move down the timeline for setting things up to, okay, we've gone live, now we've got to quickly accelerate initial adoption during this initial change and initial deployment, but then we have to find a way to keep it going year after year. And then we need to find a way to evolve it. So there'll be new releases coming out. If you look over a 20-year timeline, there'll be a lot of new releases of systems and other systems coming in and out that may impact our work. There'll be staff turnover and promotions and transfers and all kinds of great things. That all of this brings tremendous complexity that needs to be managed in an ongoing, orderly, structured fashion, especially in large organizations. If you don't have a team in place to do that, you're going to be in real trouble. And then over time, how do you maintain that ongoing adoption effort to make sure that we're still using systems in a way to generate value and it's still aligned to our business goals because they're going to change? So your customers should be doing this internally, and I'm willing to bet that many of them are not. So let's take a quick look at this. Now you know a little bit about what an internal success team would look like, and we'll do our final poll, and that is quickly just let me know how many of your customers have their internal success teams to make sure that they use your software and keep realizing value from it year after year. So none of my customers do that. Rarely, some of them do, but not too often. Sometimes they'll have in place an internal success team to look at long-term adoption. Frequently, yep, most of them do, and then always, our customers always have that. They're really good. So let me know what you think. Okay, the results are coming in. This is also another interesting one. I'm excited to see this. Oh, and a couple surprising responses there. This is great. Give it a couple more seconds, and then we'll share the results and talk about it a little bit. Okay. Getting close. All right, poll is closed. So I found this absolutely fascinating. Here, never and rarely, 46 and 19% going in there. So really, we're looking at 65% of our customers don't have any internal adoption program or adoption team in place, which is really, really fascinating to me. Sometimes, so a third of us say, yep, our customers have this, but many of them don't. And then surprisingly, the frequent and the always, I love the 1%. Ideally, it would be 50% or 100% in the future. Maybe that's a bold goal that you set for your future efforts here, because I'm all about taking bold action. But when I look at all three polls continuously or combined here, strong evidence that our customers struggle with adoption and struggle with getting value on their own. Some evidence that we think we're helping them through this, and that we're doing the things that we should be doing, whether or not they're having an impact, and then strong evidence that our customers really don't have an internal success team as well too, and they really don't. They're not doing it as often as they should. So I think this really highlights some big disconnects here, that a lot more needs to happen to help the customers. And again, coming back to this, so that they get the adoption, so they get the value, so that they renew, and so they expand. So I think hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on some things that we should look at a little bit differently here. But let's move on. So I think this begs the question then, if this is what our customers should be doing, what should we be doing to help them? How do we as a SaaS vendor help our customers do this? And I think one of the first things right up here is we need to make sure our customers are educated on how to build an adoption program and the need to do it. If they are still thinking we just do some training communications, or they think, oh, well, the product's so useful and intuitive, we won't need to do that. Those are some real warning signs here that there's a whole education socialization piece that needs to happen to highlight for them the lack of adoption that they will likely receive and the lack of business return they will receive if they don't do some of this work. And one of the things that I often encounter is customers will say things like, oh, well, what you're saying is we've got all this extra work to get your software to deliver value. And I think the best response to that is really, well, no, this is work that you have to do regardless of any software. And this is work that you need to take, even if it's a homegrown one or an on-premise software. It's not just us or even one of our competitors. This is the type of thing it takes to get value from IT in your organization. Now, you may have not done this before, but that's probably because we didn't know we needed to do this before. And now we know, and now we can help you through it. And with our help, you can do it faster and cheaper and better than if you didn't do it, if you tried to do it on your own or through one of our competitors. So you may get some pushback on that, but it's really important to help your customers realize they need to do it. And then you've got to provide the expertise and resources and tools and coaching that your customers need to be able to do this on their own and to be able to do it quickly. So this is really important stuff here. And for you guys to be able to provide those tools and coaching and resources, that means someone in your organization really needs to be an expert on it, or multiple people. And depending on the size of your team, maybe all of your team needs to have expertise in adoption and adoption methodologies, or maybe you have one or two subject matter experts that support all of your customers through your CSMs. There are a lot of ways you can do that, but what it comes down to though is if you don't have deep expertise on how to set up adoption programs and efforts and how to get your customer to implement those, you can't be effective in coaching them and guiding them through it. I think another thing that you can help your customers do is help them set specific user adoption goals and targets, and then how and when you're going to measure these results, and really help them say, all right, we've put in place the program, now let's come up with something concrete and specific that we can measure to and make sure we're hitting. And if we're not hitting these, let's agree to come in together and figure out what actions need to be taken to get us there. And then really, once you get, there is a lot of effort up front here to get customers to do this up front during an onboarding phase. But afterwards, you've got to help them manage ongoing change and adoption, new features coming out, new releases, new staff in their organization who need to make sure they're doing things the right way, not the way the person 2 desks over may be doing it, which is probably outdated. So really, how do you keep that going all the way through? And then once they start to get adoption, they start to learn that, how do you help them really evolve to maximize the full potential benefits they can get? How can you help them adopt new features, use things in a new way, improve their collaboration so they're getting that full value? And I think when you look at all this, you can say, wow, there's a lot of different activities that we should be doing to help our customers And when we do this, what it really becomes is a force multiplier for our customers. We invested some extra time and effort up front to help them set up their own internal success teams and their internal programs. But then when we do that on the back end, they're able to execute more effectively, and we have to provide less resources and work on the back end to help keep it going, and they will sustain it themselves. And they will learn how to adopt technology, learn how to adopt new feature sets when they come out. We'll still guide them through parts of it, but they'll be able to do it faster and easier that way. So just sort of breaking this down, if you see all that and you think of this and say, well, there's really two parts to the relationship of customer success. Part of this is really managing the accounts and the relationships, and that's a lot of what's currently done, business reviews and helping with renewals, explaining the roadmap and what new features are coming out or have come out, trying to expand customers and provide what other sort of success support they need, try and do that. But then there really is this whole adoption piece. How do we actively facilitate them? How do we accelerate onboarding? How do we get people to log in every day? Making sure that people are using the system and the functionality as intended and as designed so that everyone can get the data and the value from the system they need. How do we make sure that it's delivering the ROI and that business value that we need? And that is a big part of customer success now. And when I look at most CS professionals and most CS leaders, we talk about, say, yeah, we're pretty good on the account piece and the relationships, and we can improve some there, and we're working on that, and that's great. They really are not doing as much as you would expect to really drive adoption, and they really struggle there. And when we talk with them and their teams, they don't really understand what conversation to have with the customer or what advice to give them or how to spot when a customer is heading down a bad road and is going to be in trouble. So I think, this is a real evidence that there's a lot more work to be done in this area. So that brings us to our final section here, which is, okay, we see the need now and we agree that maybe what we're doing isn't quite getting there as much as we would like. What do we actually do about it? Where do we need to go? So I would say, you need a multi-pronged approach. There's really no silver bullet for this. And you can really layer on a lot of things to help your customers. And some places I recommend people start is right up front, early in the relationship, even during the sales process if possible. Create an aha for your customer that they're the ones that need to have an ongoing success team. They need to have their own adoption program in their own organization. You can help them through it, but highlight for them the need for this and get them to realize that if they don't do this, not just with your system, but with any system, they'll never get the value that they expect, and they will always be struggling, and they will not get the return on their investment that they're looking for. Once you get that aha, next piece is to get their commitment to put in the effort and the resources that they need to drive this adoption and to get the success that they need. Because if they're not willing to do it, that should also be a red flag that your customer has a high churn probability, and you should be careful of how much resource you're willing to invest in them if they're not able to do it. So put this into your account plans. Think about this as you think about how we're going to work with customers. And as you're looking at your deployment plans and you're looking at your strategies, if your customer needs a lot of help to build their internal success team and their internal capacity, factor that time in, factor those resources in. Help your customers get the training expertise they need in user adoption, change management, tools, methods, programs, all the great stuff. And people talk a lot about organizational change management. I recommend that you rephrase that as ongoing change management, because a lot of current traditional change approaches, they're just that focused on go live. They're not focused on ongoing perpetual change. And you really need to get customers there. If your customers don't have the expertise and the skills that they need, and those skills are not readily available to your project, so even if they have a team in-house, but if it's fully devoted somewhere else, and I've seen that happen, if they're not available for your software and your project, they're not available. You've got to help your customer build that capacity that they need. So then once you've done that, and if you step forward here, you should be at the point where your customer should have some sort of internal success resources, expertise, or people in their organization. Now you're at a point where you can really take and help provide key tools and resources across your customers that can be used by everyone. So that's where you can get to the shared resources once they have the internal capacity to do something with them. If you give someone tools and resources, but they have no expertise or knowledge or acceptance that they need to do something with them, it's not going to go anywhere. So you've wasted a lot of time. But once you have those, you're good to go. And then as you go through, you need to help them in step 5, really adjust some of their expertise and guidance that you give them over time to help them maximize and sustain adoption over the life of the system. So If you've had a customer that's been with you for 3 or 4 years, that's got their things up and running, they're going to have very different needs from you to adopt new features and to get new staff up to speed than a new customer that's never done this before, that has just signed up the dotted line. So you really need to think about that. And then step 6, time your program to always keep customers focused on benefits realization. What I mean by that is, if you're having meetings with your customer to review their adoption efforts and their success, focus them on the challenges, focus them on the wins so they see the value that they're getting. If they need to take more action, get them to commit to that. But time this too around when you're going to ask them for renewals and expansions, so that people can see the value and where you're getting it, that you're not asking for a renewal without having shown them the value that they're getting, and getting them to realize that, oh, there's more work they can do internally. So many times I see buyers of software try to blame the software or the software vendor for things that are really user adoption issues and internal organizational challenges. And just by asking a few probing questions and highlighting some evidence to those people, you can really get your software buyer, your customers, to realize, oh, no, that's not a technical issue, that's an internal issue, and I'm the one who's got to address that. So those are a couple of things to think about there. Now let's just take a quick look at some ways in which we can apply this and how this might work in different methods. So obviously, you'll need to adjust your methods on how you engage customers around these for low, medium, and high touch. But you also want to target some information at executives, and that will include things like getting them to create the awareness that they need to have an internal adoption program and an ongoing adoption program, and they need to have resources for that. You'll need to have some resources for implementation team members, both the technology team and whoever is going to staff this adoption team, this internal success team. Get them to have the expertise that they need and have them understand the actions that they should be taking at every step of the way. Here's a big one that most people miss, and that is managers and supervisors. And the reason I say this is managers and supervisors are the single biggest driver of user adoption in an organization. And I'll say that again because it's really important. Managers and supervisors are the single biggest driver of user adoption in an organization. They are the ones that really influence how end users will interact with the system, if they do it, when they do it, if they're complete and accurate in how they're entering information. Managers and supervisors are the ones who provide reviews and rewards and incentives for their staff for following processes and enabling success across the organization. If your end users are not using your system, chances are really good that there's an issue at the management level and the supervisor level. And here's the rub: is most managers and supervisors don't even know it's their job to do this. No one has ever told them it's their job. No one has ever asked them to do it. No one has given them the tools and resources they need to do it effectively. So if you're having an adoption program and an internal success team, you've got to target that key stakeholder group. So let's take a look at some of the tools and media that you could use, and then we'll give a quick specifics of each one, and then we'll round out for some questions here. Obviously, for the low touch, this is nothing new. There's going to be some electronic self-service that you need to provide here. Typical low touch or tech touch enabled customer success, those tend to be your smaller organizations with less complex needs. They don't need as much information, they don't need as much hand-holding, but they still need some, and they need some basic knowledge and some basic tools to get there. For your medium touch ones, you're going to do a mix of electronic self-service and group live interaction, sort of a one-to-many model, if you will. And then obviously, as you move up to high touch, here's where you may need some full-time resources or live individuals giving personalized handheld attention to do this. If you've got a huge enterprise customer spending tens of $millions a year with you, it's pretty important that they are doing all the right things so that they get the value so you keep them. It's probably worth investing in a full-time person or a couple of people to help them if they're not doing it themselves. And there are a lot of ways you can work that into your CS plans. So let's take a quick look here. What's some ways to do this with tech touch? Tech touch doesn't mean no touch, so emails and automation alone won't get you there, but it will get you some part of the way there. You can obviously provide some access to the online materials and the resources that will help customers not do it on their own, but they should really focus on building their skills and capacity to drive adoption and success in their organization. Don't have things that are specific to your product yet. This is general skills around organizational change, user adoption, and the need for them to do that in their own organization so that they get value. Once they've done that, and once they've built up their skills around driving adoption and all that good stuff, that's when you can provide tools and resources that are more tailored to your specific product and more focused on how they get adoption of your software, of your product. But if you jump right there without that baseline knowledge and skill, you're not going to get very far. And then obviously you can focus your email campaigns and webinars and online tools, all that good stuff, on increasing their ability and awareness for their internal success team. A lot of customers, they do a lot of this work for prospects, but they don't do as much to build capacity for existing customers, especially at scale here. So really work on that first and really get an onboarding program to build their capacity, and then then focus on your product specific information. So for the medium touch, they get all the same stuff. They get all the access to that. Plus, give them access to live experts with expertise in adoption and change that can help them address their specific user adoption needs and challenges in their organization. You can do this a lot with one-to-many methods, such as small group webinars, group coaching calls. Some organizations might do a cohort program where you have, here's a call for everyone who joined in January. Here's a call that will have customers from people in the same industry, or we'll limit attendance to 25 people so that we can ask questions in real time. But it is that one-to-many so we can scale our organization, and they'll be on a set schedule, those kind of things. And I think also you can do this as a flip model, where from a one-to-many perspective, if you know, hey, we don't have time to do a QBR and EBR with every single customer, or we can only do it once every 6 months instead of every quarter, ask them to come to a group call first and go over these basic issues, get them used to the adoption pieces. Especially you can invite people if you see through your applications like at Churn Zero that, oh, they're having issues with this piece. Focus group calls on that in advance and get the general information out, and then come through in your one-to-one and your EBRs and talk any specific issues with that particular customer based on what you've seen. And obviously you can offer this fee for service or private coaching or consulting or additional upsell opportunities. In fact, worked with one software organization that offered this as an add-on to their customer success services, and it was very popular with their customers because they needed a little bit of help, but they didn't need too much, so they offered that, and it was very popular. And then I think the next one, high touch. Here's really where, depending on the needs and the size of your organization and the size of your deals, you can get really creative with some hands-on piece. Some of the things we've done and we've seen very helpful is doing in-person user adoption training and success planning workshops. You can do these in an interactive way where either you bring in one customer and their entire team, or you can do a workshop where you bring in 3 or 4 people from multiple customers. You have them all in a room, and you walk them through educating them on user adoption programs, how to set up a user adoption team, what that program should look like, the skills that they need. And then through those exercises, help them even put together a high-level adoption plan that they can use when they're going to implement your software. Great way to do it. People get really excited to say, oh, we've got something we've never had before. And I would even argue you can and you should do this pre-sale. If you're trying to close a big deal, offer this up as a service to your customer. We're going to bring you in and do this workshop with you and really show you how and when we're going to create the value, what we do and what you do, and how we really de-risk this for everyone. And you can invite your salespeople to be part of this workshop. It's a chance to really hear the customer's needs in depth and build some relationships. Highly recommend that, really effective things. And you can even say, look, it's normally X amount to do this. Come in for, if you take us and you don't hire us for the software and we don't close this deal, you pay the fee. And if you hire us, we'll give you credit for that money. So there's no risk for you as a customer. Here again, number 2, assigning a CSM to be that user adoption success coach. One of the things that we've heard consistently is our customers just need someone to keep them on track and to keep them accountable and keep them focused. So having regular scheduled calls, whatever the cadence should be, that really helps them go forward and move and stay focused and make sure they're doing the things they need to do so they don't get distracted. And really make sure that you're holding your customer accountable for the success here, and really say, hey, we're in this together, but you've got to do the work, and really take care of that. And then going through from there, you can also help them set specific user adoption goals and identify specific activities that they should be doing to get value from your software. Link these goals to the desired business outcomes and really be able to show them, you do these activities, this is line of sight into the business outcomes that you want. Let's go and do this and let's measure the results. Obviously, it's a higher touch effort, so you won't be able to do that with everyone, or you'll have to find a one-to-many way in which to do that with other customers. But it's really, really impactful and really leads to that success that you're looking for. Okay, so that's the bulk of it. I want to just quickly share a couple things, then we'll open this up to questions. If you're looking for help on how to do this, or you want to help your customers build their own skills, we do offer User Adoption Mastermind, uamastermind.com, and Customer Success Mastermind, csmastermind.com. These are ongoing training professional development programs for professionals. Obviously, CS Mastermind is for customer success professionals. UA Mastermind is meant for your customers, for their internal success team. It includes online training materials, online education, live instructor events, ongoing training tools and new content being delivered every 4 to 6 weeks. Coaching is available. It's simple, it's scalable, it's a great way to work. If you're interested, hope you check it out. We do have a quick limited time special here for 15% off for the first 6 months, so go and check it out. And I'll send out some links to resources around that. There's a free demo of the Foundations course for those that you can sign up and take. And it's really very helpful, and your customers can like this, and you can share that code with them as well too. So go for that. And if you say, hey, you know, we want to actually have help build our customers' capacity, we don't have time or the expertise to build this, we can gladly work with you to help you include User Adoption Mastermind in your onboarding program for your customers. And we can work with you to come up with some nice discounts and bundles around that, as well as we have some affiliate programs as well that can offer up additional revenue streams for you as well. Very happy to share more information if you're interested. If so, just go to tritanus.com and you can schedule time to contact us to learn more. Really excited about it because we've already built a lot of what your customers need, and this is a great win-win for everyone here. So give it some thought. We'd love to hear more. Okay, thank you so much for sitting through that. I hope you found this useful and would love to open this up to questions now. If you have any thoughts or things that you'd like to ask, I'm happy to answer anything. As well as if you think of things later, by all means, come to the Tritanus website and ask questions. I'm happy to respond back to them too.
Awesome. Thank you for that presentation, Jason. And as he said, at this time, I'd like to invite you to please go ahead and submit your questions, and we will go ahead. We've had some that already came in, so let me start with one. The first question is, how do you help engage with customers who do not see a value in sharing their business goals or vision for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, etc.?
Yeah, that's a tough one. What I found helpful is sometimes taking a couple steps back and coming back and asking them, well, why did you buy our software? What are some of the problems that you want to solve? And sometimes you can come at things a little bit sideways. Tell me how you realize that was an issue that needs solving. What are the implications if we don't solve that? What does that need to look like? So sort of start there and get them a little bit more comfortable with it. Or even just directly ask them, is there a reason you don't want to share that? And sometimes it may be they don't know, or they may view it as confidential. And then you can come back to say, well, the better we understand what you're trying to achieve, the better we can recommend solutions that you may not know are available to you. So let's start wherever we need to start and build a relationship, because you don't want to turn them off, but you want to keep asking for that. Asking the types of questions that will get you the answer you need, even if they won't answer the direct question itself. So that's one way to do that. The other way you can do is sort of help them, and sometimes even tools and templates sort of help them line of sight, say, okay, we want to use this feature and function, and well, we need to communicate to your team and your users, why do we want to do this and by when, and we will know we are successful when we achieve X from doing this. And sometimes you can get there a little bit too. But ultimately, I think if you have a customer that really is combative for whatever reason, they're going to use your product, they don't want you to help them with this. If you have a large customer base, sometimes you just have to say, you know what, we should probably focus our attention somewhere else where we'll be more successful, because our confidence that this person or this team will get the value that they need to renew is low, and it may not be worth our time and effort to keep fighting a battle we're probably not going to win.
I think that makes sense. Our next question is, how do you start a conversation regarding a customer's need to establish an internal success team?
That's one of my favorite ones. So one of the things that I think there are a lot of ways that you can do is start with a question, tell me about your current technology stack. Tell me about all the applications you have in your company. How many of those are getting full 100% effective adoption? How many of those would you say are, you're getting the full value and that everything is exactly as you would want it to be. There's no more value you could get from them. And so they'll probably say, none of them. And then you start to say, well, tell me on average, what's your typical system? How much would you say you get used, or how much value you're getting from that? And they'll probably say somewhere between 10 and 30%, maybe 50%. So you can do that. And then one of the other things you can do is say, well, let me share with you what I see happen on with most customers when they go through it and implement software. And you tell me if this fits with your organization. Then we can talk about some things we might do differently. And that's when I go through and I typically draw out that ROI chart with them. I do it on a whiteboard. It's, you can do it in 2 minutes and you can bring them along in conversation. If you go to our website, tritanus.com, we have a free e-course out there that really walks through that chart in more detail, and it has a narrative exactly what I've used with customers to open up that conversation. And once I get this aha that we need to, the issue is not that getting the system live, it's making sure people use it, 1, 3, and 5 years down the road. Then I start to say, well, tell me about how you typically structure that, and then you go to recommendation mode. We highly recommend that you invest a team in doing this. And depending how big they are, the team can be one person part-time if it's a really small application used by very few people. Or, I've had customers where they had a team of 15 full-time and created an entire new department around it because it was an organizational-wide enterprise issue. So that's usually a great way to start the conversation, is ask a couple probing questions, flip out the chart, the ROI chart, and say, yep, this typically happens, and ask some questions to get their head bobbing, and then go through and add that recommendation that here's what we recommend.
I really like that. Our next question is, how do you go about sharing usage data to drive adoption with your customer without it seeming like you're calling out users or tattling to their manager?
Oh, that's a fun one. One of the things that has been really helpful is early on when you're planning an adoption program, set the expectations with folks and say, one of the things that people need to adjust their behaviors, they need feedback about how they're doing. And most people want that. So you need to present this and say, so here's how we're going to do this, folks. You will be getting reports that just show where the system is being used and where there are issues or where there's parts of non-usage. And initially, this is a learning curve, and we're using this to really, for the next 6 months, this is going to be used to help us figure out where we need to adjust our behavior, where we need to adjust the system, where we need to adjust expectations. So we're going to use it for the first 6 months that way. And then after that, we expect you to come through that learning curve because we want you to do your job differently using the system. Because the new message is, it's not just how well you do your job that matters, but it's also how you do your job. And if you're using the technology in a way that enables everyone to use it, that's great, that's part of your job. And if you're using it in a way that prevents others from using the system because they don't have access to data because you never put it in, or you put things in late or wrong or in the wrong place, that's sort of a performance management issue at that point. So it becomes a performance management tool. And then eventually down the road, if people are still over the long term not using the system and they've been asked to do it and they've been able to do it, then you need to take individual actions just like you would if someone's not performing their job, outside of technology. So really setting those expectations of, hey, this is a learning tool, then we're going to use it down the road after this window to monitor performance, then to take action as necessary, but it's not punitive out of the gate.
Got it. We have a question that came in that says, for software that's a bit more complicated to implement and go live, how would you suggest carrying out onboarding and ongoing success efforts across different levels of customers?
I'm not quite sure exactly how what's behind that question, but some of the things that I found is that the onboarding effort, you need to do what I think of as the customer onboarding before the end user onboarding, and really go through and say, hey, how do we get the customers, executives, and team to realize that they need to invest in these ongoing adoption programs? And then what does that need to look like? How will that change over time? And there is a lot of upfront effort to get these set up and to get the system out the door and to drive that initial adoption. But over time, it can be a little bit differently. And then from there, I think you can figure out how you scale it based on need of the customer or where they are. But I'm not sure I fully understood that question, and I would invite whoever asked it to contact me directly afterwards. I'm happy to explore in more detail with them to make sure to get them the right answer.
Thank you. Let's see. We have a question that says, trying to find the other one. How do you elevate your primary contact within the company from end users to a decision maker to plan the adoption program?
Yeah, great one. I would say it should really start there. It should start there during the sales process. And part of this here is getting your salespeople to focus on how are we having the right discussions with our customers to not just land the initial sale, but making sure we're selling for renewals from the very beginning and including this as part of our sales piece. So, hey, whoever's going to be writing the check, whoever has approval authority for this, let's talk with them about how we're going to create value for them so that they want to renew over the next 20 years. And let's talk about the steps that we need to do from that. So that's one way. I know a lot of our customer success clients, they will get in, and we hear all the time, I only have an end user, or I have someone, in the tech support or system administrator, but I don't have someone else there. And sometimes we say, well, what you can do is actually go and whoever your contact is and say, I need to have a conversation with someone about these bigger issues across the entire user base, because there's probably some things that need to happen in your organization to get more value. If you're not the right person, who would be the person to talk about this with? Because I don't want to waste your time. Can you connect me to them? And many times people will help with that. Sometimes you'll get a gatekeeper and you need to get creative in how you get around that. Some folks even go so far as to call a main number or call LinkedIn and ask who the right person is. But one of the things I've definitely found is when you get to the decision makers that are saying, hey, we're writing a check for the system because we have a problem to solve and we want to get value from it. If you can get in front of those guys and have or people and have a nice, compelling discussion about how you can add value for them and how you can help them really de-risk their investment and improve their organization, they'll want to talk to you, but it takes some hunting to get to the right person.
Yeah. Maybe a step past that, our next question is, what are some common objections you hear when pitching a comprehensive change management plan, and how do you overcome them?
Good one. So I often hear we need to just sell people on what's in it for me, or we need to, just do a little end training, or, the user interface is so intuitive, we won't possibly need all of this. And that's really where usually I come back and the easiest way to do that is to ask really compelling questions and targeted questions, and usually in a sequence that you need to think through to create that aha that, that's not the case. We're gonna have some issues around that. And sometimes I'll say things like, you know what? I hear that from a lot of folks, and then they typically find that 6 months later, people really aren't using it and they don't know why, or a year down the road, they've had all these other problems because they didn't know that there were other factors that prevented people from using the system even if they wanted to, or they didn't realize there were so many interdependencies in their organization because someone downstream couldn't use the information because someone in like the upstream process, like in sales or marketing, put in the information that they needed to do it. So when we start to look at those, then we say, well, whose job would it be to take care of this? Whose job is it to make sure these conflicts get arised? And suddenly someone says, no one. Well, that's a challenge. And during our methodology in our training class, there's a whole bunch of questions we ask people in sequence. And one of the first ones that you can ask that is so impactful is, whose job is it to make sure that the system is used in generating business value a year or 3 years down the road? Who in your organization is accountable for that? And typically you'll hear, well, no one. And then like, well, that's kind of a problem. So if no one's accountable for that, how likely is it to happen? Well, probably not. Okay, so maybe we should do something about that. And then walk them down through other questions. Okay, so what are the activities that you need to do? Oh, I'm not sure. Okay, well, let's talk about that. And as you go through this, you can get some really interesting head nods like, oh, this is bigger than I thought. But remember too, here, this is new to a lot of people. It's not part of their day job to think about user adoption and how they're going to drive that until you ask them the questions that make them realize that this is a huge issue that they need to address. And then they're like, oh, okay, I've got to do something.
Awesome. I will throw in one last question that came in, and it is, let's say they are on board for creating an adoption team. How big is that team, and who is it comprised
of? How big it is depends on how large your organization is and how complex the application needs to be, and then really how much work needs to be done on an ongoing basis to adjust that. So I would also say that typically you will need a larger team, more effort up front during the initial implementation and initial adoption and accelerating through. And then after a year or so after go live, it'll probably shrink significantly to just be more of an ongoing adoption effort and get people to adopt new features and functions. I've seen some people do it, very small organizations where it's, a part-time FTE. I had one client where they created an entire new department with over 15 people, full-time jobs, senior executive in the organization heading it up to make sure that this happened all the way through. And then they had, so that was their full-time team, sort of a core adoption team. And then each location, each division had their own representatives to that team that had work to do in their site and their location, working a little bit more hands-on for a period of time. So it can get kind of expansive because you need to think of this as an organizational transformation to really help people drive adoption and adopt new ways of working, not just a new technology. And that's a bigger challenge because it's the people, it's processes, it's policies, it's all kinds of good things. So you may need a more comprehensive effort. So it depends on the organization, but it's definitely what I found is that when people make those investments in this, the business outcomes for their organization and not just the value they get from their technology, but through that entire adoption and transformation effort is really astronomical, and it can really pay for itself plus in very quickly. So
awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with it. So I think that will wrap up our webinar today. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and remind you that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar in the next 24 hours. At the end of this webcast, a survey will pop up, and we'd appreciate it if you would just take a moment before logging off to provide your feedback. And thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Jason.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.